This is not your normal random dungeon finder video that you've seen before, where it's just some random YouTuber like me trying to convince you that random dungeon finders are a good idea. Even though it is. My thoughts on whether it's good for the game or not I've made perfectly clear in numerous videos. And at this point in time in Classic, I honestly think if Blizzard don't see that the time is now, then anything I say is pointless anyway. Instead, I want to give you some info you might not actually know. If you've played retail, you think you know how Random Dungeon Finder works, and if you've played private servers of Wrath of the Lich King, then you definitely know how those work. And the reason I say you definitely know how those work on private servers in particular is because obviously there's only one pool of players to choose from. As in, there's only one server, so it's not a cross-server dungeon finder, it's just using the players that are on that individual server. Everyone knows, and some people probably hate the fact that it's cross-server, and you end up with random people who you'll likely never see again. This is one side of Random Dungeon Finder that I actually understand other people's point of view on. Whilst for me, Random Dungeon Finder is a convenient and fast way to get into PvE content, so actually who I'm in a group with is kind of irrelevant. I know not everyone feels the same way. They want to see familiar guild names or players that can be held accountable for their actions in a random dungeon, which is totally understandable. At the moment, if we was to break down how a group is formed, it's either you see a group in your chat box or you sit and look at the amazing Blizzard LFG tool. You whisper for an invite, maybe even tell them your ludicrously high gear score because even to do a random heroic, people want you to have full All-to-R 25 hard mode gear now. You get in the dungeon, you might say hi and you clear the heroic, and then in some extreme cases, you might even say bye before you leave. There really is very little social interaction or even memories made from doing a random heroic with pugs in its current state. I'm not about to tell you that Random Dungeon Finder will create long-lasting memories for you because obviously that's not the case. Random Dungeon Finder is what I said earlier, convenient. All the way back before the announcement of Wrath of the Lich King, where they announced they wouldn't include Random Dungeon Finder, myself, other content creators, and even all the guys in the comments tried to find a middle ground. A way to have the tool in the game that many of us love without it upsetting those that don't want it. To achieve this, it would need to not be a mandatory system you need to use. It wouldn't give bonus rewards. Even the ideas were being thrown around in fact that if you was to create a group and run an instance without using Random Dungeon Finder, you guys would be the ones that get extra rewards. So it would actually still incentivize making a group over using Random Dungeon Finder, which would be absolutely fine. So the people like me who are lazy, they can get their groups formed fast using Random Dungeon Finder, but those who put the time and effort in will get an extra emblem or even the bag that tanks and healers get with a load of consumables in it, also with a random chance at a mount or a pet. I'd be cool with that. Give the bag to all members who form a group and run the instance, but just give the lazy ones the bare basics. Now, without turning this into a Cataclysm video where you all start going, oh my god, he's talking about Cataclysm again, trying to make sure we all play it so he can make videos next year. For the record, I don't care if you play or not, I'll still be making videos, so all I will say is quitting at the end of Wrath of the Lich King would be a mistake because you're going to miss out on probably one of the best first tiers of raid content in WoW's history. I really do mean that as well. Anyway, Cataclysm made a lot of changes to the Random Dungeon Finder tool, which would make absolute sense to put it into Classic right now with. They're changes that I just never hear anyone talk about, so let's break them down and talk about why Cataclysm's Random Dungeon Finder would actually be perfect in Wrath of the Lich King. Firstly, breaking down what Random Dungeon Finder does. It finds a queued tank, a queued healer, and 3 DPS. It puts them together. It doesn't discriminate or prioritise on gear score. As long as you have the relevant eye level to be able to queue, it should be on just a first come first serve basis, and it doesn't prioritise, let's say, a paladin tank over a DK tank. That means if you play a less desired spec, where you find it difficult getting into groups anyway, you'll have an equal chance to get into heroics as everybody else. It also means if you're trying to gear up and the Random Dungeon Finder criteria of, let's say, 4k gear score is met, it won't pick someone with 5k gear score over you with 4k, which would absolutely happen right now, and I'm not proud to say I am guilty of this. If I was making a group, I would 100% take the best geared person that whispered me. I'd show absolutely no regard for the fact that the person with a lower gear score will benefit far more from my invite than the one with a 5k gear score. It's just about getting it clear quick. Whereas if you haven't got that option, you just get chucked in with whoever you get chucked in with, everybody's got a better chance of being able to actually get gear. Now, a major change to how the system worked in the 4.3.4 version, also known as the Cataclysm version, compared to the 3.3.5 version, which is the Wrath of the Lich King version, is they changed the tool to always prioritise players on your own realm. This is a change which happened in patch 4.1, which in all of my hours, days and weeks of reading patch notes, I've never noticed before until recently. There were major improvements to the Dungeon Finder in 4.1, which actually makes it almost perfect. So firstly, yes, it will always try to group you with players on your own server. So if you're on a mega server, it's highly unlikely you'll see people from other servers. That's a positive straight away. Even if you ended up with one person from another server because there isn't many healers on your server queuing right now, the fact that you should most of the time be a majority same server group is actually perfect. Now, going back to when I said it didn't prioritise or discriminate, well, now it would, but in a good way. We all know that outside of doing dungeons for your daily or for your emblems, it's likely if you're gearing up, you're doing it for the loot, and you don't want competition. Well, in 4.1, the Dungeon Finder will always try to avoid putting DPS classes of the same armour type in a group together. Of course, if there's thousands of clothies queuing, but only a handful of rogues, then you would still see multiple of the same armour type. But the fact is that it at least tries to balance the group out for loot, which is pretty good. This is 100% more relevant in Cata when everyone wants to use their highest level of armour to receive the specialisation bonus, which, if you aren't aware, if you can wear plate in Cata, you want to wear plate in all slots so you get 5% extra of your primary stat. Because that doesn't exist in Wrath, it's still possible to have paladins needing on cloth and stuff, so even though the system of trying not to stack the same armour type used is good, it would still have its flaws if we put it in right now. I would still say the pros outweigh the cons, at least having more of a chance of not getting in a group with 3 leather wearers or, 5 clothies. I don't know how you get 5 clothies in. Maybe 4 clothies and 1 plate. Now, this next change is my absolute favourite, and it might not be something you like personally, but I think with the player base that play Classic, I think this would just fit in perfectly. Think about why we do daily heroics at the moment. Currently we do it for extra emblems, or killing the last boss of the heroic plus so you get the bag with the extra couple of emblems in as well. The additional emblems that we get at the moment from things like the bag at the end of a heroic plus is to counter the fact that we don't have a random dungeon finder tool, and you still have that issue of if you miss a day, you miss out on the emblems. You literally cannot ever get those emblems back. However, if we add the tool in its 4.1 state, you won't miss out, because currently, if you can't log on for a couple of days due to work or real life commitments, like I said, those 2 days of emblems are lost. That's 2 days of extra waiting for an item from emblems for you versus someone in your guild who happened to be able to play every single day that week. Well, instead, with the random dungeon finder tool in 4.1, you can receive the bonus emblems from the random dungeon finder a total of 7 times a week. So you could smash out all 7 dungeons in a single day, get all your emblems, and not need to worry the rest of the week. Or you could do a couple a day, knowing that you actually can miss a day or 2 and not need to worry about that either. It's no secret that a lot of us who play Classic are reliving our glory years and now have jobs. Well, not me, but you probably have got a real job. You've got kids, bills to pay, and just generally pretending to be adults. Logging on every single day can sometimes be a challenge. Whereas if we had the random dungeon finder in this state as well, this removes that tie. It makes missing a few days on WoW less punishing, and also means when you are playing, you have more to do, because you can now catch up on what you missed. So while it's not more content, in a way, it kind of is. Because when you missed your couple of days online at the moment, you ordinarily just do your daily heroic and that's it. Now you might do 2 or 3 because you can. This means more people queuing, quicker times, higher chances of it being server only, and the big one, it actually means people not on a mega server have a chance to do something outside of AFK and in Dalaran. Take it from someone who spent the last few months on a server that was slowly bleeding out. It got harder and harder to find a group to anything at all until it got to the point where there was no groups to anything. At least it would have been a little bit less painful and maybe even bearable if Random Dungeon Finder was in the game. I'll touch on Call to Arms. You know right now it's safe to say that pretty much every tank and healer gets a bonus bag even if it's a guild group. While it's normally a load of rubbish in the bag, it's still an extra reward for basically nothing. It doesn't incentivize the use of the LFG tool, it doesn't add to the experience, nor does it help anyone out at all. I mean, other than the people just getting free stuff, obviously. Call to Arms, while not perfect, does everything that I just mentioned. It does add more usefulness than these extra bags from just basically doing heroics, because it's not about just encouraging people to use the random dungeon finder, it has to be on a pug basis. In the random dungeon finder UI, it will show an icon of what is the least represented role, and if you are that role, you can queue and get a bag. The thing is, you can't queue with friends. You have to be queuing solo. So it's a reward for going solo and helping other groups form that are in dire need of your services. Of course, it will normally be a healer or a tank, but there are those times where DPS are in need as well. This is a prime example of a system that works, that Blizzard tried to put into the game in a fashion where it just flat out doesn't work. If you take all these improvements to the random dungeon finder, which aren't necessarily meant to be for Wrath of the Lich King, and you put them in now, I truly believe it would be the best version of random dungeon finder we could actually have, and I don't think people would be that mad about it. As long as you got across the fact that it will prioritise people on your own realm. You will be able to, catch up on missed emblems because you've got a weekly cap rather than a daily cap, essentially. And it even tries to manage the groups in a way so smart that it tries to give you as much loot in a dungeon as possible. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, like and subscribe, and even consider joining the channel as a member. You get some cool members-only content and a badge, so when you comment, everyone knows you support the channel. That kind of stuff. See you on the next one.